Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. My name is Christina. This is a reading for Pisces, or if you're just feeling drawn to this message for whatever reason, then it's for you. The main focus of your reading today is what is your current energy? What is something good that Pisces can focus on? And where is an area of growth? So Pisces, I've already pulled your cards, and your message is just really lovely today. It just feels really nice and beautiful, and it just feels like relief. Which is great because the last couple of readings have been a little bit difficult, so I'm really happy to see this for you, Pisces. So we're starting off here with the oyster. I always see this as being like something about to be revealed or something coming into being, but also with the other cards that you have here, it's talking about a manifestation arriving in your physical. So you have here the weightlessness card and the squaring of the circle, which is beautiful because how I see this weightlessness card is that you've probably been receiving like a lot of downloads or synchronicities or energy or just like input or vision maybe perhaps of something arriving. But because it hasn't yet grounded in the physical, it can cause sort of like anxiety or worry or just like a feeling of not being grounded in your physical reality. That's what this weightlessness card talks about. But it's coming out with the squaring of the circle today, which I love because this talks about bringing structure or creating structure in order to express some sort of non-physical idea. So what this is talking about, manifestation is coming in. Something that you've been perhaps working towards for a long time or wanting to come in for a long time is absolutely arriving in your physical. That's how it's feeling today. And this Seven of Inspiration is, I'm seeing this as kind of like the oyster, but it's also like taking all of this sort of energy that you're receiving and actually almost like, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like shaping your physical reality to match that in some way, right? It's like, think of like an oyster opening is kind of how this energy is feeling today. It does take a little bit of effort. There is sort of like a time element that has been part of this manifestation or dynamic or something like that. But it is finally opening. Something is opening or the pearl is ready to be revealed. Something like that. And it's like this page of materials, which I love so much because it talks about like holding a vision or focus so intently that it becomes part of your reality. And I feel like that's absolutely what's happening for you in this reading today, Pisces, which is beautiful. So we're starting with the current energy, which is so interesting. You have here the tiger and the protection card, which makes so much sense together. I often say about this tiger, it is kind of a complex energy where the tiger is incredibly strong and independent and fierce, right? And usually that sort of fierceness or strength comes from sort of having to defend oneself with the protection card. And so you absolutely have done that, Pisces. And I feel like it's perhaps just like defending yourself against like heavy emotion. Because usually with the tiger, it only sort of comes out when there's been sort of like a wounding. It could be really past wounding or trauma or a trigger of some sort. It's coming out with the Queen of Emotions, which talks about this sort of like heavy emotion. But it is an energy that you only sort of want to maintain for a short-term period of time, right? It's like, it's not, if you maintain this position for too long, it's like always having your adrenaline going. Eventually you are going to burn out at some point. So I feel like you are absolutely coming out of this state, actually, Pisces, because the next couple cards to come out are the hawk, which I love so much. The breath card and this Muse of Voices. So it could be, especially because the tiger comes out with fire and then moving into air, which is just sort of like the fire has been extinguished kind of energy, perhaps with like this water energy, but also it's like the air is the opposite energy to fire. So it is kind of like, it feels very much like like relief, right? Relief from some sort of it just feels like a trigger, perhaps, like something that's harmed you in the past. It's not like a full sort of reaction or anything like super difficult, but it did sort of activate your energy a little bit, is kind of how it's feeling. So briefly sort of on the defensive, perhaps having like a spike in adrenaline, but then like almost like talking yourself down and realizing that it's fine, like breathing through it. But the hawk is also about like forward momentum, and especially because it's coming through the Muse of voices, I see this as sort of being like a mental challenge rather than an actual like physical threat. It could have been something like some sort of mindset that you had that perhaps caused you pain or hardship in the past is now being cleared or clarified, perhaps. Which I love so much, because you have also here the 8 of voices, which is all of that sort of like mindset thing. And then the magician. But this was such a lovely energy and transition, because it's like perhaps you've been having like in terms of like not clear vision, right? Like not seeing a situation clearly, perhaps. And then moving into clarity because you sort of connected with your breath and did some sort of like mindset restructuring, perhaps, something like that. And then once you do that, once you sort of get yourself out of this mind spiral or mind trap, it's all of this sort of magician energy of like the energy's flowing again. You have access to your connection to source, perhaps, something like that. Which is just lovely. And then you have the frog, which is such a different kind of energy from the tiger, because the tiger is all about like protection, right? Self-protection, strength, but strength in a sort of for like perhaps aggressive or just like defensive kind of strength is what the tiger is. But the frog is almost the opposite of that. It's like full vulnerability, like the frogs breathe through their skin, and so it's having sort of an open exchange with your environment, with all of this sort of watery energy, which is lovely for you for this. It's what this magician is, right? It's like having access to all of the sort of energies in your environment and allowing it just to flow through you, because this one is a little bit more blocked off, I want to say, which is really nice. And so the next couple cards is like, I was gonna leave it there, but what you have here is this zebra that wanted to be part of the reading, and so today, because it's this, there's some sort of integration happening, because these are both fire elements, right? They both have stripes as well. But you can see that this, I always notice about this card is that the triangle is activated, right? It feels like a trigger of some sort, or some, if not a trigger, it's just something that's gotten your energy on alert in some way. But the zebra is much more peaceful. It's like this is like the off switch. It's much more calm. And I feel like when you're in this energy of the zebra, there's more of this sort of like openness. And because I noticed today, like the zebra ear is like perked in a certain direction. So it's like, I feel like when you're in this state, you have all of this sort of strength still, because the tiger is incredibly sort of independent and strong. However, that strength comes from like a fear, perhaps, of hurt is kind of how the tiger presents, but the zebra is much more open, is kind of what I'm trying to explain there. And it's like when you're in this state, when you're in this sort of zebra state, you absolutely have a connection to your third eye, but it's coming in with the forgiveness, which is interesting because it's not something that I was expecting, but perhaps it just feels like relief, right? Like the energy of forgiveness is that if you hold like grudges towards other people, or if somebody has harmed you and you're holding that sort of anger inside of you, the only person that it holds back is yourself, right? It doesn't, that anger or resentment, perhaps, is just sort of a negative energy that you don't want to have stuck in your energetic system. And so once you sort of enter into this forgiveness stage, which is what the zebra is talking about, it's like you can hear something coming or someone coming or something new, which is absolutely gorgeous. And what that energy is this Four of Wands and the Lovers, which I love so much. Because this actually I had a dream last night where it was this energy. It was like, it was a holiday. I was with my family. We were just like celebrating. And the one that I love was there. And it in the dream, it felt like I hadn't seen him in a long time. And so like just the relief of having him there was all of this like zebra frog energy, right? That's what this energy is talking about. It's like being reunited with the one that you love is what your reading is about. And so if we move on to the next section of what's something good that Pisces can focus on, is all of that energy. It's the one that's coming back. It does feel like a coming back, which I will explain. And all of the card, like these two sections, normally I keep them separate on my table, but they just wanted to be blended together. Like they wanted to be together, wanted to be one section is kind of how it's feeling. And you have these lovely, lovely cards where you have the mouse, the camel, and the whale. And so the whale was this energy, right? It's like you can see how they're facing one another. You Pisces on this side with the frog and the zebra, and the whale. And what's interesting about the zebra is that it's like you can hear it coming before it actually happens with this whale, because it feels like they haven't yet emerged, but they are about to, right? It's like they're about to sort of surprise you or make a grand gesture, is how this whale came in the last time. But I feel like Pisces, because you're so tuned in, because you're in this energy of forgiveness, it's like you can hear them coming before they arrive. So perhaps this may not be true of both of you, but this may not be true for all of you, I should say. Perhaps this sort of dynamic perhaps ended, or not ended, but the last time you saw them, maybe it wasn't ideal, or there was some sort of energy. Perhaps you felt hurt by the way that the last time you saw them, something like that. Perhaps you'll know what that is if it's resonating for you. It doesn't have to be, but for whatever reason, the way that the story is unfolding for you is you have the Lovers card, which came out sort of in between, and then this 10 of Inspiration. So it looks like look at how similar these cards are, right? It's the same background, where it seems that your person in the past had to sort of walk away from this lover's energy, right? It's like if it was sort of an option or like something that you expected to come together previously, for some reason it didn't, because your person walked away, is kind of how it's looking like. And the reason was, even though it's sort of like they were in this environment, it's like they had to turn back for some reason, with this 10 of Inspiration that talks about burden. But with the camel here, just so interesting, because I was talking about this camel in a previous reading as like having to carry your own water, right? Having to carry your own water through the desert with the jugs. There's something here about like they had to complete something or had to sort of make a difficult journey away from you for whatever reason. But now it's like they're coming in with the whale, right? Tons of water. They're in sort of a much better environment, perhaps, or it's like they went down into the depths, perhaps metaphorically or literally, I don't know, to retrieve something is kind of what it's feeling like. It's like they had to go and retrieve something. Okay. I don't know what that is. Perhaps it's even just like a new perspective or something like that, because I feel like you have here the Partnership card, which is incredible, because it came out like right underneath or like right above the Lovers. So this is coming back, is kind of how it's feeling, that somebody is coming back to your life, Pisces, where with this intention of the lovers and the partnership. And it's just sort of explaining sort of what it is that they've been going through since you last saw them or you last talked to them or whatever. Because you have here the 10 of inspiration again, and then the 8 of inspiration. All of this inspiration energy, because you have another one, the 3 of inspiration. So it's like they had to go in the opposite direction. It's like, so this 8 of inspiration is coming through 2 messages where it's like they were moving as fast as they could in order to retrieve whatever it was that they lost or left behind, right? They had to go back. I don't know to where, but they had to go back to get something that was left behind. And it's like all of the energy was sort of pulling them back towards you is kind of what this is talking about. But I also see this card as like moving as fast as they could, right? I feel like it's like they knew that they had to go back to something in order to come back to you, but it's like they were moving as fast as they could, but there were sort of like delays. Like I see this as like a sports car with drag. No matter how fast you move in a certain direction, there's always going to be resistance and drag that sort of pulls you back. It's just a natural part of this matrix that we're in. But anyways, so you have here the perception card, which is interesting because I see this as being like having such an intense focus on a task or something like that you sort of miss potential distractions in the background. So I feel it kind of feels like that they were focused so much on, perhaps it's like they didn't even intend to sort of leave the connection. It's like because it's like they were with the perception card, perhaps it's like they were in such a specific focus, perhaps having to do with like responsibilities or work, or like they are sort of the center of their community in some way, right? It's like all of sort of the energy was moving away from this connection, right? They were focused so much on whatever it is that they do, like their work, perhaps their responsibility, that they didn't notice this lover's energy in the background is kind of how it's coming through, perhaps. That's interesting. But I feel like as well as this, if that's true, if it's like they didn't notice that there was a connection sort of on the table, it's like the further they went away from it, the further they went away from the connection, the more it sort of pulled them back, right? And it's kind of like that was absolutely sort of necessary. It's kind of, because I'm getting now like the idea of like a rubber band, right? The more that you sort of pull it, the more resistance that you put in it, the faster or with more force it comes springing back, right? There's something about that as well. So it's like they almost had to go really sort of far from you or from the connection, because you have here the boat energy, which is so incredible, because this is talking to me about like having to maintain calm and not, because you can't see the problem or the solution. Sorry, you can't see the solution. And so it's like in this sort of state of like really needing to maintain calm in sort of the midst of confusion. And I feel like that's sort of the state that they were in, especially with the mouse here, right? Especially with the mouse. Where it's like they were in sort of this darkness, or they went, their perception perhaps of the situation or of their past, because this talks also about like past experiences that sort of shape how we see a certain situation, right? And so anything that doesn't match our expectations just sort of passes through as nothing. It doesn't reach our consciousness if it doesn't match what we expect to see, is kind of how this perception card is coming through. And so it's almost like they went all the way to the end, like as far away from you as they could, not because of you, but because something in their past experiences was preventing them from seeing you or the connection or what the connection could be. And so in this place where it's like they're in the middle of nowhere, sort of like figuring out or trying to figure out why it is that they feel like this, perhaps. It's like they reach some sort of new perspective with the Hanged Man, which I love so much, right? Because this is like the sudden sort of epiphany, but it's also, I'm seeing this as like the whale, right? Like the whale, the whale epiphany of like just having a sudden understanding or download, I guess, of what the solution is. I'm seeing this as, if you've watched the K-drama, The Extraordinary Attorney Woo. She's an attorney with autism, and so she has an obsession with whales. And so every time she would like crack the case, she would get sort of the insight needed, the epiphany, the eureka moment needed to solve the case or to make the case go in her favor. A whale would jump out of the water, because that's what she would envision. And so that's how I'm seeing it with this case, where they received some sort of epiphany while they were in this sort of like middle of nowhere, lost at sea kind of energy. And what it is here with the Three of Inspiration, it's coming through so differently than I normally see it, where it's like this line of dominoes. If you've ever set up dominoes, you know that they have to be a certain distance apart, right? Like they can't be too close together. They can't, but if they're too far apart, the momentum gets stopped, basically. And so I feel like that's what this is. It's like they found the area, perhaps in their life or memory or something, some sort of key piece of information, perhaps, that was preventing the momentum from moving forward, right? Because it's like the dominoes are going to stop here. The dominoes stopped here, and so they could not move in your direction in whatever way. It's like they just weren't seeing it. They weren't seeing something. But now it's like they've gone back to this place where the momentum stopped, and now they're actually pushing the next part forward, right? I hope that makes sense, where it's like they're actively sort of recognizing the place of stagnation or blockage, perhaps, right? Where the momentum was not flowing, and now they are actively pushing that forward. Is kind of how it feels today, especially with the Death card, which is talking just about like cleaning up the cobwebs, right? Like wrapping something up, perhaps finishing some sort of task that they needed to sort of complete. But what I love about these animal cards today, because the last sort of card that came out in this section was, where'd it go? I lost it. Oh, there it is. The Muse of Inspiration, which is the desert, right? It's just where they were, because I feel like now all of those cards were sort of explaining where it is that they've been, and it's like they are now making their way back to you, because all of these cards are sort of facing the other way now, right? Towards you, where it's like they pushed the dominoes so that they would flow again, and now are starting or in the middle of perhaps this journey back to you, which is being characterized by this sort of muse of fire. So they may have I have no idea what the timing is of this message, but it's like there perhaps may still be some sort of like challenge for them ahead of like a trial by fire, where it's like they do have to sort of carry their water with them for a time, but they are absolutely arriving, is kind of how I'm seeing this whale card. Okay, I'm going to pause there. I'm going to move to the extended that's posted on YouTube right after this, so you can watch it immediately. I do have other videos if you're interested in watching. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I'll see you in the next one.